Hey guys, Tom Barton from TomBartonSports.com here. David Ortiz is in the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds is not, and people are really losing their minds. What's even worse is people going overboard and saying that Barry Bonds is the greatest player of all time. That is absolute nonsense. I'm going to tell you why today. We're going to dive into that. We will get into Barry Bonds as a whole, and we're going to get into the notion and the reality of what Babe Ruth really was. All that coming up. Now, guys, if you do like that, please press the subscribe button below. If you like this video, go check out some of the other videos where I have a big video on why David Ortiz should not be in the Hall of Fame, especially before Barry Bonds. And make sure you go check me out at Twitter, at Tom Barton Sports over on Twitter. And you can check me out at TomBartonSports.com. All emails, you can go write me if you like, or if you could write underneath here. It's TomBartonSports@gmail.com. All right, guys, look, let's get into it, okay? The reality is that David Ortiz is in the Hall of Fame and Barry Bonds is not. It's a travesty. I'm not going to say that it's not. And everybody seemingly took to Twitter, every analyst, every radio station, everywhere, everybody kind of agreed, this is ridiculous. And I don't want to go on a David Ortiz bashing fest once again because I've already done that. But I think we can all agree, if David Ortiz is in the Hall of Fame, Barry Bonds should be. I mean, we have a Hall of Fame right now that doesn't have the most hits, right? Pete Rose is not in there. The most Cy Youngs, yeah, Roger Clemens isn't in there. And Barry Bonds, of course, the most home runs is not in there. And you could argue that Barry Bonds is one of the greatest players of all time, which many have. In sports, though, we have a situation where we often react to the time and say things that are nonsensical, that say things that are just overhyped. We live in the moment, and that's what we do. You've heard it. Look, I've done sports talk radio for 20 plus years. This is the worst trade in history. You know that that's always coming up. Or somebody hires a bad general manager or a bad head coach. Oh, this is the worst coach. He's the worst ever that's ever lived. No, not really. But I get the reaction, right? And it happens the other way around as well. You live in the moment and you say things like, best catch I've ever seen in my life, right? Oh my God, that play was the best play I've ever seen. Okay, you generally live in the moment in all things in life, right? In all things. You walk out of a movie that you love, greatest movie of all time. And 3 months down the road, you talk to them, all right, yeah, it was very good. It's not the greatest of all time. It didn't displace it. You hear a great song. You're singing that song, oh man, the greatest ever. Even in your regular life, right? I mean, how many people eat that perfect slice of pizza? This is the best slice of pizza I've ever had in my life. Until your next great slice of pizza, right? So people live in the moment. You just normally do. But what's concerning to me is the people that did defend Barry Bonds here are really overly stepping the moment. Calling Barry Bonds the greatest of all time. It's nonsensical. It's ridiculous. It's not even a conversation. And I had a conversation actually on Twitter with a friend of mine, and we had a good back and forth because he said, I wrote that Barry Bonds isn't even in the conversation for number one. And he said, well, Tom, you know what? A lot of people will say that he's a top 5 guy. Some people will even go as far as number 3. And I said, look, I get that. I don't agree, but I get that. That still doesn't make him in the conversation for number 1. And that is really the reality of this. We've seen this happen with Tom Brady and the Aaron Rodgers conversation, which 5 years ago to me was absolutely ridiculous. And after the 5 years has passed, I think everybody realized how ridiculous that is. We've seen this happen in sports where all of a sudden it was absolutely going to be LeBron James. Now, as the careers unfold to Michael Jordan, you go, yeah, I don't know, right? I mean, I don't know. As good as McDavid is, people go, oh, he's the best I've ever seen. Well, did you see Gretzky, right? I mean, did you see him? So people live in the moment. I get that. And there's some leniency of living in the moment. But I want to break down Barry Bonds against a Babe Ruth, which is a nonsensical argument, but I'm going to break it down because people are starting to take it serious. There was a video of Babe Ruth showing kids how to pitch, and he's showing kids how to pitch, and they're going, oh, Barry Bonds would have hit that ball. Come on. So let's break down Barry Bonds first, okay? Or break him down, which is what I'm going to do. Barry Bonds was a great player. I'm not saying that he wasn't. Was he the greatest player I've ever seen? No, look, I'm into my mid-40s. He may have been. I mean, he's up there in the conversation of the greatest players I've ever seen. I can't deny that. But are we talking about the greatest overall player of all time? Absolutely not. First of all, we have to acknowledge, at least if you like it, if you don't like it, if you think he should be in the Hall of Fame because of it or not, we have to acknowledge at least that Barry Bonds is implicated with steroids. It's an obvious change in his body. Let's be adults here and not go down the, well, he never failed. Barry Bonds did steroids. Okay. So the argument is he had a Hall of Fame career before steroids. That is consistently the argument. I agree he did. You look at Barry Bonds' statistics before he did steroids, quote unquote. We don't really know the actual year that he did it, but it's 2000 is kind of the year that we posted up. In the year 2000, at 35 years old, he went 49, 106, and 306. Probably took it in 2001. If it's 2000 or 2001, where he went crazy for 73 and 137. Okay, so let's look at his career before that. He had All-Star game, All-Star and an MVP when he was 25 years old in 1990, finished second in the MVP the next year, MVP the next year, MVP the next year, fourth in the MVP the year after that, and then three more top five finishes before he took steroids conversation. Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer. Barry Bonds was a phenomenal player. Barry Bonds was nowhere near the great Babe Ruth. It's laughable to even go there. Without steroids, it's a complete joke. With steroids, he still doesn't equal up. So, okay. So we already admit and we already know Barry Bonds is a cheater. Barry Bonds' career is glorified because of steroids. Let's just put that out there. Number two, oh, by the way, the conversation of, well, you know what? Look at the size and look at the athlete that he was. Another ridiculous argument, okay? Because Babe Ruth at the time when he was younger, was known as one of these workout warrior type of guys. You could call him a fat guy or whatever. Go look at his real numbers and look at his real size and the reality of how big and tall he was. It wasn't that much. His playing weight and his playing size, I mean, the guy's 6'2", 215. It's Derek Jeter, right? So did he balloon up later on in his career? Sure he did. But he was a 6'2", 215 guy who stole bases, stole home. I mean, played a good outfield, was a starting pitcher and a hitter. Babe Ruth was not a guy that was just a lump, right? So to think that Barry Bonds had all these advantages of all of the weight training, everything else, and that Babe Ruth wouldn't have taken advantage of that, it's ridiculous. That's number one. Number two, we don't know how Barry Bonds would have done with the travel schedule they had back then, with the idea that they're using lesser equipment, obviously, playing on lesser fields, obviously, playing in bigger ballparks, obviously, right? That's all there. I don't know if Barry Bonds could have even swung Babe Ruth's bat. And by the way, Barry Bonds is a cheater outside of steroids because Barry Bonds wore an illegal elbow guard, an elbow guard that people have written stories about. People have written conversations about the elbow guard when you're talking about Barry Bonds, and how it was an apparatus as a launch angle, right? How it helped the swing and increased the swing. Not only to mention that he was able to lean over the plate, not only to mention the fact that he never had any concern about that. Everybody had to pitch him outside. Well, why do you get so many walks? Well, you couldn't pitch him inside because he had an elbow guard on, right? And it's an elbow guard that helped. It helped the spring action. It helped his swing. Let's not act like it didn't because, oh, by the way, it was banned. Now, he was grandfathered in, so he was allowed to continue to wear it, but nobody else in baseball was. So if you don't think that that is an unfair advantage, let's just end the conversation right now because you're living in a different world. So Barry Bonds had steroids. Barry Bonds had illegal elbow guards. Barry Bonds had illegal advantages over everybody. And Barry Bonds, at the end of the day, still didn't have Babe Ruth's numbers. Still didn't have his numbers. Even with the idea that Barry Bonds, okay, he took steroids, so let's just chalk it up and let's just look at his pure numbers. Barry Bonds, the all-time home run leader of all time, led the league in home runs twice, ever. Twice in 22 years. The home run leader led the league in home runs twice. Once, obviously, in his big 73 steroid year. The home run leader and the guy that, wow, you know what, this great offensive force led the league in runs one time. One time when he was 27 years old. All right, you could say that was the team around him. Okay, no. This great colossal home run hitter led the league in RBIs once. One time. So, you can look at Barry Bonds and you can look at the numbers and you start to pull correlations of, yeah, he's very, 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 very good. You want to argue top 10? I always say he either just misses or just makes the top 10 for me. There is a debate at the end with guys like Stan Musial and Honus Wagner and Barry Bonds. He usually makes it into my top 10 when I'm having a conversation, just so I don't fight. Can I put him at 11? Sure. Could I put him at 8 or 9? Absolutely. He's not top 5 for me. But again, we go back to the notion of Babe Ruth. It's a joke. Where Barry Bonds was leading the home run league, the league in home runs out of 22 years twice. Babe Ruth did it 6 consecutive times. Okay. He did it 12 times in 14 years. And one of the years, by the way, that he didn't lead the league in home runs, he only hit 35. He had 100 less plate appearances. He played in 35 less games. Why did he play in 35 less games? He was suspended 35 games because he was playing barnstorming tours with Negro League players. We'll get more into that in a moment. So there's that. RBIs, it's not close. Runs scored, it's not close. Walks, not really close. And then you go to the things, the further analytics that everybody likes. Because it's very easy for me to say, look, Barry Bonds, if he didn't hit any home runs, was a fringe Hall of Famer. Babe Ruth, if he never pitched, because everybody goes to the pitching. If he never pitched, Babe Ruth's a Hall of Famer. He batted 342, guys. Okay? If he never hit a home run, he's a Hall of Famer because he batted 342. But you guys don't like batting average nowadays, right? The millennials don't like batting average. So let's go to slugging percentage. All-time highest slugging percentage at 690. More than Barry Bonds. OPS, 1.164, all-time high. OPS plus, 206, all-time high. All-time high. If you look at Barry Bonds, his numbers don't even compare to Lou Gehrig, who, again, is in my top 5. You would have to knock out Lou Gehrig out of the top 5. Lou Gehrig's numbers overall are just better. A guy like Barry Bonds, and everybody talks about the walking and the on-base percentage. Well, Lou Gehrig got a 447 on-base percentage and a 632 slugging. Barry Bonds, 444 on-base percentage, 607 slugging. The all-time home run leader cannot hold up to Lou Gehrig, neither on base percentage or in slugging percentage. So, again, when we're talking about the greatest of all time, let's come back to reality. Let's come back to where we are. But this isn't only about Barry Bonds. It's also about the greatness of Babe Ruth. The greatness of Babe Ruth that many people just seemingly forget. They overlook. They have reasons why not, right? Why not? Why can't Babe Ruth be the greatest of all time? And everybody comes up with a million different things. Well, the pitchers today, throw 100 miles per hour. And you're right, they did. But the pitchers today also have a lot of advantages. They only go 5 innings, okay? If they had to go the amount of innings, it would be different. The medical differences. Barry Bonds had multiple surgeries, multiple injuries. He had the elbow guard because he was protecting a bad elbow. Babe Ruth today, do you think he would have got the medical treatment? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not, right? So we go to it all, and there's just no logical argument that Babe Ruth isn't the greatest of all time. Take away his pitching, he's the greatest of all time. Take away his home runs, he's still a Hall of Fame. Okay? But you can't just take that stuff away. If you're going to say Barry Bonds is a great outfielder, well, you got to say that Babe Ruth is one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Which is, again, absolutely a joke when you're talking about Ohtani anywhere in the stratosphere of Babe Ruth. Because Babe Ruth's hitting 100 points higher, or close to about 90 points higher than Ohtani. I know you guys don't like batting average, but once again, it's still a telling statistic. Ohtani also hit a lot of his home runs against lesser competition, which you expect nowadays, right? There are a lot of guys in baseball that shouldn't be in Major League Baseball. Against Cole, he batted 178. Verlander, he batted about 200. Chris Bassett, under 200. Against good pitchers, Ohtani just failed. He wasn't good against good pitchers. Now, Ohtani as the pitcher, yeah, he was pretty good. He was a pretty good 5-inning pitcher that never had to do it in clutch time. Pretty good is not Babe Ruth. Ohtani's not the pitcher that Babe Ruth is. Ohtani's not the guy that Babe Ruth is. Not the batter, not the player. So this went from Barry Bonds to Babe Ruth. Now, the big elephant in the room, the anti-Babe Ruth people, this is the big elephant. And this is probably why you're going to watch this video, because I am going to promote this as this, because it is something that we need to have a conversation with. It's an uncomfortable conversation for some, but it's a reality conversation. A lot of people out there always have a problem, and their go-to move is Babe Ruth wasn't that good because he didn't play during integration. Okay, I understand your argument. I get it. But guys, let's come back to reality. This is not a black and white thing. This is a mathematical numbers argument that you cannot win if you're using logic and math. Take the color of the skin out of this. Take your feelings out of it. Babe Ruth likely would have been exactly the same, if not better, against Negro League players. Negro League players at the time were not nearly as good as Major League Baseball players. But even if they were, let's talk about the pure numbers. Babe Ruth played in a 16-team league, okay? At the time, they didn't integrate. They didn't do a division. So American League played against American League. Babe Ruth played against 7 other teams all time. So there's 400 players in Major League Baseball. And here's where the numbers come. 400 players back then. We're going to take 1927 as the year. 400 players in Major League Baseball in 1927 overall, okay? So we're talking about 25 men in the American League. So 400 players. Then you turn around and you go, how many would have been integrated? Well, in the 70s, at the height of integration, when the black population had more people playing Major League Baseball than ever, it was about 20%. Right now, for comparison, by the way, it's 7%. Okay? So take 20% out of that 400. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? 20%. I'm going on the high number. I'm going the highest it was ever, right? 20%. By the way, if you had a Hispanic population, nowadays it's about 20-25%. So we'll go with the 20%. I think it's a very fair number. I think that you guys would agree. So what is 20% of 400, right? You're going 20, 40, 60, 80. Okay, you got 80. Okay, so 80 players Babe Ruth would have faced against at that time that were black or Hispanic or Asian, whatever you might want to say. So we're doing pure statistics here, pure numbers, not feelings. Okay, so you have 80 players. Knock half of them right out because half of them are going to be hitters, right? Half of them, boom, hitters. So now you're down to 40. 40 pitchers out there. Now, the baseball average, generally speaking, if you go through the years and the years and the years, the average baseball player, the average pitcher, about 1/4 of the league is a solid pitcher. 3/4 of the league are not very good. So turn around. What number were we at? Oh, hold on a second. We'll just keep chopping it down. We're sitting here, and it's not going to be 40. It's going to be about 10. Now, out of that 10, you got to figure that the Yankees were going to have, 1 or 2 of these guys, right? So we'll give the Yankees 2. So that's 8. There's 7 other teams. Babe Ruth would have hit against about 1 pitcher per team that was better than the average pitcher. About 1 per team. About 8 guys. That's it. And now again, that's 8 guys in saying that he would struggle against them. So now let's go into more stats. And these are statistics that very short-term statistics, but it goes to prove the point even further. The idea that Babe Ruth couldn't play against Negro League players, despite the fact that every historian says that the Negro League was not very good, okay, compared to the major leagues, despite the fact that people will absolutely go to the hilt and still sit back and cite that is ridiculous. But I have some numbers for you. And I'm pulling up Bill Jenkinson, right? In 16 games against the Negro Leagues that Babe Ruth played in. This is his numbers. 55 at-bats, 11 singles, 2 doubles, 12 home runs. He batted .455. .455, guys. Against the best of the best. Because if you're playing Babe Ruth and you're the Negro League, right? If you're playing Babe Ruth and you're the Negro League, what are you doing? You're throwing your best. Right? Babe Ruth's not playing against your number 4 starter back then, right? You're going up against the best of the best. And they're bringing the best of the best. Babe might have not cared as much. I don't think he's caring as much as the barnstorming Negro League tournament as he would, the World Series, for example. But he still hit .455. And 55 at-bats, it's a very small sample. But it's a large enough sample to understand that, yeah, it does matter. So Babe Ruth dominated the Negro League competition that he played against. Babe Ruth dominated every competition he's ever played against. And oh, by the way, again, even a smaller sample size, but when he did play Cuba, and they only played Cuban players in a very short stint, it was a very small, truncated kind of situation, but he hit .355 against the Cuban players. Let's just come back to reality here. It may hurt the delicate little brains of the people out there that just don't understand math and statistics when it comes to baseball. It might hurt your emotional standpoint that you didn't get to see the greatness of Babe Ruth. It's hard for people to look back and see in older times, how great really was. But this is reality, guys. Barry Bonds is not the greatest player of all time. Barry Bonds likely is not even in the top 5, maybe not in the top 10. A great player, maybe the best player we've all ever seen. I'll even give you the best player that you've ever seen. Sure, I won't give you much pushback. But stop saying the word Babe Ruth to Barry Bonds. It's an insult to Babe Ruth. It's an insult and a disservice to Barry Bonds. And it's just upsetting on a whole nother level that people are talking about this and saying these things without really having any understanding of Major League Baseball. So while I wish that David Ortiz didn't get in, the moment he did get in, Barry Bonds should have been there. But don't go to the Hall of Fame and teach your kids, or sit down and try to teach your kids the nonsensical, ridiculous argument that Barry Bonds is anywhere in the stratosphere of Babe Ruth. There's only one Babe Ruth. It is a clear-cut number 1. Don't bring him down to try to prop up Barry Bonds. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment and subscribe below, and go check me out at Tom Barton Sports over on Twitter and TomBartonSports.com. Have a very good day, everybody.